So I think across lots of different workplaces, workers compete against each other for promotions. And what that means is to get promoted up to the next level, it's not enough to be performing at a very high level in absolute terms. You also have to perform at a very high level in relative terms, right? In other words, you need to be better than your coworkers. And I think instinctively workers understand that there's this competition for promotion. According to a very recent Google survey, the vast majority of respondents will say two things. A, getting promoted is very important for advancement, it's very important for the growth of their future income. And B, there's a limited number of promotion opportunities in their workplace. And that's true even if everybody does very well. To put things into perspective, that's fixed ideas a little bit. Suppose you and I work at a very large major market law firm, right? And we're part of the same cohort of associate attorneys that have just entered the firm. Suppose you and I are rock stars and we're generating 2,500 billable hours, and among our cohort, we're the only two that have done this, right? Then it's very likely that at the end of this sort of initial period, that both of us are going to make partners. So the probability of us being promoted is very high. But because the number of partner positions at the end of the day is limited, suppose same scenario, you and I are generating 2,500 billable hours, but now instead of just the two of us, we've done it along with 100 other attorneys. Now our probability of being promoted up to that partner level is now much lower through no fault of our own because we both have worked hard and we've generated a very high level of performance. So this idea that despite individual effort, despite the high performance that we're generating, there is still the possibility that we may get passed over for promotion when it comes time for that. That's what I refer to as promotion risk, and that's going to play a sort of a key role in the study. So the way firm performance pay ultimately works comes from this tension I just described, right? So if lots of workers at a particular company, they're all doing well, then our promotion prospects are not so good, right? Because the competition for promotion is going to be very high. But at the same time, if a lot of workers at this company are performing at a very high level, then the firm is likely doing very well, right? And that's kind of the underlying tension. So bad news for our promotion prospects means good news for firm performance. And so if you have any kind of a pay structure that pays us more in exactly the states of the world when the firm is doing well, that's likely going to correspond to those states of the world where promotion competition is more intense, and we might need an extra kick in our income to compensate for the fact that our promotion prospects have now declined. Right, so I think when appropriately designed and applied in the correct way, firm performance pay can do good for both the firm and the workers, right? And here's how. So on the one hand, when you have this insurance role being played by firm performance pay, it's gonna make the promotion tournament sort of less risky. And what that means is it's going to improve the incentive provision that's being provided by this tournament structure, right? Imagine a world where there were no firm performance pay and we're just competing for the promotion. If I understand that this promotion prospect is very risky, so that even if I work very hard, there's some high probability that I won't get the promotion, that's not going to be very incentivizing. But if the firm can come in and say, we're going to supplement this with firm performance pay in such a way where when your promotion prospects decline, this pay is actually going to be higher, now you're going to be more incentivized to put in that effort to generate the high performance. The second thing that it's going to do is it's going to help smooth out the sort of talent selection process, right? Because we think there are some workers out there who are very high ability, but also very risk averse, right? And so in the absence of this type of insurance, they may not want to participate in these promotion tournaments because of promotion risk. They may opt for a different job title, or they may opt for a different company altogether, right? And in that way, we're going to have a mismatch between talent and where that talent can be best used, right? So overall, if firm performance pay is designed correctly, appropriately applied, we think it's going to make the allocation of talent better. That's going to make the firm more efficient. And because workers participate in that prosperity, they're also going to be better off, right? But the operant word here really is appropriately designed and applied in a place that it's meaningful. The work that I've done actually provides quite a bit of guidance about how exactly you want to structure this pay scale, right? And so there's sort of two key things that companies should be focused on. The first is that firm performance pay should have an individual performance vesting element, right? What that means is only high-performing workers should get this type of pay. And if we return to our original motivation about ensuring against promotion risk, this makes perfect sense because as a low performer, I would not be a candidate for promotion in any state of the world, and I don't need this insurance. It's only when I've hit a certain absolute threshold that makes me part of that conversation for promotion does promotion risk actually kick in, right? So it's quite important that when designing firm performance pay for the purpose of ensuring against promotion risk, that only high performers get this type of pay, right? Otherwise, you're just going to end up providing disincentives because even people who don't work hard end up benefiting. And the second thing that companies should keep in mind is this threshold effect, right? And that again comes to the insurance property of firm performance pay in this setting. So if I think about low firm performance or moderate firm performance, likely there aren't so many highly talented people at the firm where that's going to be a binding constraint, right? Likely everybody who's performed at this very high level can get promoted. And so promotion risk doesn't really kick in a salient way. It's only at very high levels of firm performance where you're very sure that many of your workers are superstars. That's when you need to be worried about some people doing well but not getting promoted. Right? And if we look in practice, oftentimes firms' compensation policies reflect these type of structures. Right? So if we go back to our example of the large law firm, typically associate attorneys are given profit sharing, but conditional on two things. The first is that as an individual attorney, they've generated a very high number of billable hours. That's the individual performance vesting element. And second, they don't get a part of all of the firm's profits, only a part of the firm's profits above some threshold, right? And so we see that oftentimes the way they are structured, the compensation is structured in practice kind of reflects the concerns that the study highlights, right? And that's sort of at the firm level. So at the end of the day, firm performance pay is trying to insure against promotion risk. And so where it's going to be effective at doing that job is going to be in places where there's promotion risk to begin with. Right? And so I think the model or the framework really applies to these very large organizations that have exhausted their growth opportunities and they have very rigid organization structures, so they're not able to accommodate the surplus of talent, right? So as an example, suppose I'm a very large retailer and I have exhausted all my growth opportunities. If I have 100 stores, then I have 100 store manager positions. I can't add another position because that would entail adding another store and I'm not able to grow. So in a firm like this, where there's these type of frictions that prevent them from coming up with another position, this is where promotion risk is going to be the most intense. And another thing you want to think about is we also need firm performance to be a good indicator of the amount of talent in the firm, right? So again, if we come back to our example of the large law firm, how the law firm is doing is going to be largely driven by how good the attorneys are. But one can obviously imagine another scenario where the firm outcome is divorced from the quality of talent at the firm. And in those type of instances, the firm performance measure is not going to be a good indicator of just how intense promotion and competition is going to be in the future. And that's why sort of overall, you want to think about applying the model and its ideas in industries where human capital is very important, right? So technology firms, large professional services firms, and where the organizational structure is relatively rigid, right? And in the other extreme, obviously, if I have a very small company that is in the growth phase, and if they have 10 superstars, they would just create 10 new product lines or 10 new locations to accommodate that talent. You don't need to resort to firm performance pay as a type of insurance, right? You would try to accommodate talent in other ways. So these trends that we're seeing in the labor market today, they're going to quite significantly change the way a lot of companies are set up, the way a lot of jobs and tasks are going to be set up. How they're going to affect the performance pays insurance role is going to be a difficult question to answer, but to provide some guidance, we can think about how these changes are going to affect the underlying promotion risk, right? So you take a trend like the integration of AI tools, the use of information technology in a very large scale. If at the end of the day, technologies like this allow the manager to increase their span of control, that means for the typical firm, they're going to need way fewer middle management positions, and that's going to increase the likelihood that there's going to be this bottleneck in the middle of the hierarchy. That makes promotion risk more salient and firm performance pay more important. Right? On the other hand, we have changing workforce dynamics, right? And changes in the demographics, and due to their preferences, sort of shifts in labor market conditions. So workers in sort of more recent generations are much more likely to change jobs for whatever reason compared to workers, say, 30 or 40 years ago. And what that change means then is when a worker thinks about their career progression, that's no longer so tied to a single firm, right? So if worker X doesn't get promoted at firm A, maybe it's not such a big deal now because they just take their talents somewhere else, right? And so these type of changes will make promotion risks or less salient, and then firm performance pay less relevant. And at the end of the day, it's just going to be about how these types of changes affect particular jobs and their characteristics, and in particular, how they affect promotion risk in general.